Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Half and Half this morning. Scott and I are happy to be here with you. Um, we're talking about breath. We worked on that last week a little bit, and just like finding your natural connection and your natural rhythm of breath, what your body wants to do. And I bring that up just to remind you at any point as we're working with breath today, you can always go back to that. Your body wants oxygen and it is going to find an efficient way to do it. So if you start to get lightheaded or just like things feel kind of weird or any, just go back to your natural breath at any point. Um, but we are going to talk about some ways to direct your breath and shift your breath a little bit. So the diaphragm muscle, maybe you've heard of that muscle, your breathing muscle. Your diaphragm is a voluntary and an involuntary muscle, just like I talked about. We can control the diaphragm. We can hold our breath if we want to, and then maybe slowly release it, like a singer slowly releases or a swimmer slowly releases their breath. We have control over that muscle, and we can use it voluntarily. And it's also involuntary. You fall asleep, your diaphragm keeps going. You pass out, your diaphragm keeps going. It will always move. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to control it. It will always find movement to keep you breathing. So today we're going to work on the voluntary side. We're going to create some control with it. We're going to try to tune into it. We're going to try to use it in very particular ways, just like we might try to use our bicep in a particular way or our abdominal muscles in a particular way. Um, but it's kind of a cool muscle because of that, right? Like at any point, I can just be like, nope, and it'll just keep doing its thing that way. So the diaphragm is a muscle that sits in your rib cage, up inside your rib cage. It's a dome. It kind of looks like a big mushroom, I think, especially if you look at it from underneath. Just looks like that mushroom cap there. And it's way up in the rib cage and goes on exhale when it's relaxed. It goes pretty high up, and the lungs sit atop that. And then on inhale, when it contracts, it sort of flattens out and pushes down. And that draws a little more space into the lungs. And then the air just flows into that space that's been created. So the lungs don't have any muscular tissue. They're not pushing and pulling. It's just the diaphragm pushing, making a little more space in the lungs. The oxygen just flows into that space. And then exhaling, it domes back up and the air rushes out. So I'm going to say it one more time. Here I am. Here's my diaphragm. I'm going to inhale. It's going to push down a little bit, flatten out. I'm going to exhale. It's going to relax and dome back up again. Now I'm going to take that out of my rib cage for a moment and look at the whole movement. So as there's a pressing down, notice my elbows are going out to flatten. And then as there's a coming up, my elbows coming back in. And that's an image I like to use in Pilates breathing a lot and how we work the diaphragm when doing Pilates. Because maybe you've heard to breathe diaphragmatically into your belly. That makes sense, right, with what I just talked about. As you push down on the inhale, it kind of pushes on the organs and the organs expand and your belly expands. It's not like you're breathing oxygen into your belly, but that pressing down of the diaphragm can expand the belly. But that's not so great in Pilates because you're trying to use those abdominal muscles, right? It's also maybe not great when you're doing other activities. If you're trying to move furniture or swim even, or any of these things where we need our core muscles, we don't want to let that go. So then we talk about the ribs going out sideways. So there's less emphasis on the down, and there's this kind of equal emphasis on an out. That the way the diaphragm contracts, it can, as it flattens, we can get that sort of out feeling in the ribs. It doesn't push down quite so much. Don't have to let everything go in the abdominals quite so much. So we've done this before, right? We've talked about wide rib breathing. And that wide rib breathing is a real controlled use of your diaphragm, about the way you're using your diaphragm. So I'm going to look at that today. So take your feet a little bit wide, just however they're comfortable. You can have them pointing forward. And then we're going to take your left hand across to your right rib. And I always like to take a moment and just kind of feel the ribs, like where's the bottom of the rib cage? How low does it go? It always goes a little lower than I think it will on my body. And then thinking about halfway up the rib cage and just feeling some of the spaces in between the ribs. Now I can't touch the diaphragm because it's inside the rib cage, right? So what I'm touching is abdominal oblique muscles, serratus anterior muscles. Then there are the actual rib bones. And then between all the ribs, there are these intercostal muscles that go rib to rib and a little bit inside the rib cage. And then deeper, one layer deeper to that, that's where the diaphragm is. Can't put my hand there, but I can visualize it. I'm going to take the right arm up and just do a little visualization there. So we've got a lot of images you could work with. You're going to inhale. You could think ribs go out into your hand. Exhale, they draw back in. So your ribs, like my elbows were, right? So that inhale is a out with the rib, and the exhale is a down and in. Maybe you visualize that, maybe you feel it. You could also think about that relaxing on the exhale. The diaphragm doming back up is a relaxation of the diaphragm. It's kind of funky, right? But bodies are cool. Now we're going to take a little movement with that. So next time you exhale, you're just going to kind of deepen into that release by taking a stretch over to the side. And as you inhale, stack the ribs back up again. As they push out into your hand, and as they exhale, they drop down, right? Sliding down as you reach over, we get kind of a stretch to the diaphragm. Now follow your breath. You don't have to go slowly as I'm going. You don't have to go as fast as I'm going. As you exhale, you reach over. As you inhale, you come up. Just see what that is, what that rhythm is for you. One more time. Both arms down. Take a moment. I like to close my eyes in these moments. You also could just, whatever helps you focus internally. Do a couple natural breaths and see if you notice a difference. Right rib, right lung, left lung, just anything. How does it feel between the two sides? So some of the things I notice, some of the things students have reported to me they notice is maybe just feeling a little more alive in that area, being able to feel that kind of rib area move more. Sometimes it feels like this lung is more open, like it expands more. I get that feeling a lot, like, oh, the two lungs feel different in how they're breathing. Another thing is that foot. I often feel that foot is just down in the floor now, almost lower than the other foot. So how that breath connects to your whole groundedness. Yeah, and you might notice other things as well. Let's try the other side. So left arm up, right hand over to the left rib. Let's do that same kind of palpating. Check it out. Where's the bottom of the rib cage? It's pretty low. And then coming up about halfway up, feeling the spaces in between the ribs. Yeah, maybe you're pressing on some of those muscles, kind of getting in there. Underneath all of that is the diaphragm. And then before you start the side stretch, just breathing into your hand. Can you feel some movement? Inhale, the rib goes out, like your elbow went out, like my elbow went out. Exhale, it comes down and in. And then when you're ready, add the movement to it. However long you exhale, float over to the side, releasing the diaphragm, letting the ribs sink down towards the waist. As you inhale, you come back up, you have that wide rib feeling. Follow your breath. And again, I'll just reiterate, I'm going really slowly. That's my rhythm this morning. It's not always my rhythm. Sometimes I like to go a lot faster in this exercise because that's what my breath is doing. So really do your breath rhythm, whatever it is. And one more time. And then both arms down. Now, same test. Close your eyes or however you like to see things internally, see how things feel. Sometimes the first side feels like it's lost a little bit. So, first, just notice how the two sides feel. What effect do you have on this side? And then, after a couple breaths like that, think about both sides. Can we bring both sides into some equilibrium and imagine that wide rib inhale, exhale, down in and exhale. And maybe this reminds you of something. Maybe it reminds you of the rib connection we work on. So, with all this sideways movement out and in, with the breath, it facilitates drawing the ribs together in the front as you exhale, which facilitates your abdominal muscles coming on. Now, while we're standing, let's stay standing for a little bit. Another thing that kind of makes the diaphragm a little juicier for a lot of people is twists. Now, sometimes twists happen a lot in the shoulders, not going to make your diaphragm juicy. So we're going to think of the twist, all this awareness you have. In fact, let's do hands here first and see if you can feel. Take a breath in, wide ribs. As you exhale, the ribs draw together, and just imagine the ribs do a little bit of twisting. It's almost like your shoulders don't actually twist. You're just making the movement from down at your ribs. Inhale to center. Let's go the other way. Exhale. One rib goes back, the other goes forward. Sometimes it's that forward one I feel a little more reaching around. Playing with that. One more each side. And then let all that go. Okay, last one we'll do. Getting the back ribs to open a little bit more. And I like to do this one in spine stretch. So yes, ribs are going out and in, but they also can open up through the back a little bit more when I'm doing this rib breathing. So, kind of like spine stretch, you can bend your knees a little if you want. And then you're going to exhale and roll forward. And as you do, see if you can only go as far that these lower ribs, they don't actually shift. They're still pointing straight down. It's just my chest and my upper back that's opening through here. And then however you want. If you can reach your hands back there, you could put your hands back there. If you can't quite reach, it's also good to just maybe put your hands on your knees and then just play with a couple breaths, moving into those low back ribs. And as you exhale, you could feel the ribs drawing together in the front. This is basically a standing mini crunch. Thinking about the low back ribs having some movement. And then rolling back up to standing. Okay, so hopefully we've got a little bit of juicy sort of movement feeling in there. Let's take it down to the mat and actually do a mini crunch. See if we can get that feeling. So however you like. And then knees bent, feet flat. As your hands come behind your head, it makes it harder to get those low ribs to connect. That's just is what it is, especially if you have any tightness in your chest. It's like the tightness in your chest sort of pulls your rib cage up, and kind of disconnects you from a nice, healthy movement in your diaphragm. So that's tricky, right? We just know that's tricky. So sometimes I like to do this with my arms up to the ceiling, but I don't have to worry about that as much. So I'm going to show it that way. But if you have neck stuff, maybe you want to do hands behind your head, but just still feeling, it's a little more challenging to keep the ribs down and moving there. So, hands in line with your shoulders, fingers to the ceiling, kind of soft elbow feeling, and a real wide back of the rib cage feeling. Rib cages are round, right? So shoulder blades can be kind of round in how they connect to the rib cage. A lot of times we say shoulder blades flat on the rib cage. Let's think of them being a little round on the rib cage. Find your breath. And on your exhale, as the ribs draw down, as the diaphragm releases, we get that connection through the abdominals in the front. Head comes up. Hold the head up. Do another one of those breaths. Wide ribs. Exhale. Ribs drawing in. That connects you into your belly. Maybe you come up a little more. Lower back down. We'll take it a couple times. Inhale, wide ribs. Exhale. The diaphragm releases. Abdominals come on. Head comes up. Same thing with the head up. Exhale. And back down. Two more on your own breath rhythm. Working with whatever images work nicely for you. What engages your body and mind? All right, this time, once you come up, we're going to take it into the 100. That's your 100 imagery. However you want your feet, I'm going to go tabletop. And we pump. Inhale. Exhale. Allowing that imagery of the breath to lead you through this exercise. 4 more. Last few. And rest everything down. And bring yourself up to sitting. All right, so maybe you feel that like really burning in this part of the body. I always think it's kind of interesting when I just think about the breath and moving the breath in this very particular way. It makes my stomach work really hard. Abdominals are really working. No, I'm not necessarily thinking about my abdominals. So let's take it into a rolling down and up. So we'll go left leg straight, right knee bent, hands holding onto the back of the leg. Now we're back to that thing we did standing, that spine stretch standing. So I get that feeling through the ribs. We're going to add in the pelvis curling under too. So it's a little more round than when we were standing. Same thing, take a moment here, find your breath. Find your direction through your ribs into your diaphragm. Now, just breathe however you want. and keep breathing as we do the rolling down and up. So if you need 2 breaths to get down, fine. If you need one breath, one breath is fine too. I'll just keep working with the images that you're connecting to work your way down and up. Remembering that your leg pushes forward into your hands. As you exhale, really as you exhale and as you inhale, just a little bit of pressure of the leg into the hand. And the shoulder blades are wrapping around the rib cage. Last week, someone asked, what do I do about this leg on the ground? How do I keep that from grabbing? Start with that sense of heaviness in the straight leg and play with only going as far as the leg doesn't grip. And then just hold it there. Try to relax it a little more. Maybe that takes you farther down, or maybe that's your cue to come back up. And then just ever so slowly, you get a little farther, a little farther, a little farther. And that's really the best advice I have for that leg. Relaxing the quad, keeping the leg heavy, and inching your weight a little farther each time. Last time going down and up. Heavy left leg. And let's switch to the other side. Right leg straight, left knee bent. Spine stretch upper body. 100 curl mini crunch upper body. And then add in the pelvis lower body. So you tip back a little bit. Hands grab your leg, your shoulder blades. Nice round feeling of shoulder blades on the rib cage. Take a couple breaths. Find your side rib, your back rib movement on the inhale and drawing the ribs together in the front on the exhale. Maybe you're thinking about that diaphragm release on the exhale. Starting into the movement, use the breath you need. When it gets hard, you hold your breath, right? Like that's what we all do. Slow down a little bit in that moment where you feel it's about to get hard. And what do you have to coordinate? What are all the things you need to coordinate a little bit at a time? Millimeter farther, millimeter farther. Check in. You have a habit. It's deeply ingrained. And it's a lot to kind of unhook all the habits. So slow it down a little. See if you can unhook and go a little farther. You might just make it up without having to hold your breath. Last one coming up. All right, let's do a little bit on your stomach. So, stomach is kind of interesting. It's like good news and bad news. Your stomach is in the floor, so it's very easy to feel if you're kind of sneaking belly breath in. It's also, if you're used to getting all your oxygen from your belly, you have less space to do it because your belly's kind of pushed into the floor. So that is the good news and the bad news. because we're trying not to breathe into the belly. So you get really good feedback when you're on your belly about whether that's moving. And also, it inhibits the belly a little so that you can focus a little more on the side ribs and the back ribs. So, like I said earlier, once my arms get overhead, it gets harder to get the back ribs to open. And that's basically what happens when we're on our stomach, typically, is we have the hands under the forehead. So it's a little harder to find. Maybe you like hands under your shoulders a little better or back by your side a little better for this exercise. So let's do hands back by your side, actually, unless you really want hands under your forehead. So hands are a little lifted off the floor, palms up to the ceiling. I have to hold my head just a little bit off the floor, so my nose is hovered off the floor. I'm trying to feel the collarbones really dropped, and that makes a little more space in my back ribs. So I'm working already. I'm holding my head slightly off the floor. I'm holding my hands slightly off the floor. Doesn't seem like it would be a lot of work, but often it's kind of oddly fatiguing, as Scott likes to say. We'll practice the breath here. Now add in that feeling of exhale, a little more attention to your abdominals. And then see if you can hold that feeling as you inhale. Now, really counterintuitive, we kind of pull on this a little bit more to bring up your head and your collarbones, and really not much more than that. Just a tiny little peek out on the floor. And then in that position, can you still breathe through your side and back ribs? So a lot of times we have little bugs on the floor because, we do. Little Asian beetles or elder bugs, box elder bugs, I think. Sometimes as I do this movement, I think of like just watching a bug crawl along the floor. I'm not going very far up. My gaze doesn't go to the wall in front of me. I'm just like watching the bug move along the floor a little bit. And then the bug gets out of my vision and I go, it's fine. And I come back down. One more time. And then relax everything down. Yeah, how's your upper back and shoulders? I'm really tired. My triceps are really tired. Doesn't seem like it would be much. This is also a really great like shoulder support exercise, postural support in the shoulders. Let's come up to hands and knees. Take a little stretch back over your heels. And then let's finish up this portion with the spine stretch. So I'm going to take my feet out just a little wider than hip distance. Arms up in line with the shoulders. Same breath. This time on the exhale, round forward. And then on your inhale, roll back up. We're just going to move through it like that and just explore what your breath feels like. And one more time. All right. I'm going to pass the mic off to Scott. I'm going to try not to drop the mic.
Good morning, everybody. So out of curiosity, how many of you have neck pain or pain across your upper back between your shoulder blades or under your shoulder blades, maybe around toward the side? If you have pain in any of those places, more than likely, your ribs aren't sufficiently involved with the breathing. Put another way, more than likely your belly is over involved. One of the great myths of yoga is that belly breathing is healthy. Belly breathing is actually one of the hardest things you can do in terms of creating neck pain and shoulder pain, especially lower back pain. So a lot of the fundamentals you worked on is to find that tone in the belly and more get the ribs moving is not just about respiratory efficiency. Your lungs are in your ribs, lungs aren't in your belly. But it's also about caring for your back, your upper back, your lower back, between your shoulder blades, even up into your neck. So as you're standing here, exhale and lightly push the air out. Let's do that again. Almost like you're going to fog up a mirror. Push the air out. Do you feel how it's your belly muscles that push the air out? Use the exhale to connect to your belly. Maintain that tone as you inhale. Exhale, push the air out, connect to your belly. Maintain that tone as you inhale. Now, not to imply when you inhale your belly shouldn't move at all. It can move a little bit. That old idea of belly breathing has been kind of a disaster for necks, shoulders, and backs. Now, while belly breathing can be deeply problematic, diaphragmatic breathing can be deeply beneficial. So remember the cue Collette shared with you to engage your diaphragm. Inhale, broaden your back ribs. Exhale, connect to your belly. Maintain that tone. As you inhale, broaden your lower back ribs. Feel how that gets your rib cage moving? And that healthy movement of your rib cage is one of the best things you can do for your health of your back and your neck. So there's that old mythology that chest breathing is somehow bad. So let's continue breathing this way and explore some additional techniques to create a little bit more freedom. Bring your left hand across to your right ribs. And with the exhale, ribs and hand move down. Now with the exhale, take your right arm up. Inhale, bring it down. Exhale, hand and ribs go down and counterpoint to the arm going up. One more like that. And release your left hand. Exhale, slightly push the breath out. Keep that tone in your belly as you inhale. Get the breathing up into your ribs. That's where your lungs are. Now bring right hand across to your left ribs. Exhale, ribs and hand go down and counterpoint to left arm up. Arm down, hand down. Now, we'll take a few breaths here quietly. Remember some of the cues we've been exploring to regain healthy movement in your rib cage to help release stiff neck and upper back. So let's take a few moments and practice these techniques. All right. So now let's make our way to the floor. Remember how we used the exhale to help gather the ribs? And then with that exhale, we took the arms up. Now we'll do it with both arms at the same time. Exhale, both arms up. Inhale, roll down. Exhale, stretch the crown of your head forward. Inhale, step your feet back. Let's take a few breaths here. Yoga pose, head down dog. And then come on down to your knees, down to the floor, and into cross legs. Now, in cross legs, if you find that your knees are up really high and or you're sitting on the back of your pelvis, sit up on something, whether it's a blanket or a pillow, maybe a chair. So you're right on the center of your sitting bones. Knees are below your navel. And using our same breathing techniques, use the out breath to connect to your belly. Maintain that light tone as you inhale. Still tone in your belly. Use the exhale to reboot that connection. Sustain, maintain that connection as you inhale. Get those ribs moving. Get the breath into the lungs. Now in a moment, we're going to do a twist a little bit different than the twist you did before. Now we're going to hold the lower ribs connected to your belly and turn to your right head, shoulders, and upper ribs. Leave your lower ribs put. Same breathing. And this is really good to help tease apart the stagnation in the neck that often causes neck pain. To help get healthy movement into the upper back between the shoulder blades. And release the stagnation that tends to lead to pain. Back in toward the middle. Breathe where your lungs are. In my career as a teacher working with the body, worked with so many people who have really chronic neck pain and upper back pain. I can't tell you how many have found relief by ditching belly breathing. Now, we're going to twist to the other side. Again, keep your lower ribs connected one with your belly and turn in the upper part of your rib cage. Head, shoulders, upper ribs. Turn, this time to your left. And back in toward the middle. All right. Those of you sitting cross-legged, switch to cross. And today I can switch to cross because there's no cat on my lap. Same approach to breath. Some of my friends are exercise physiologists, respiratory physiologists. And when I tell them about belly breathing, they laugh and laugh and laugh. Like, who came up with that? What we're doing is returning to natural breathing. Exhale. If you lengthen the exhale, do you feel how your belly muscles naturally engage? And just lightly maintain that tone as you inhale. Savor how the inhale naturally permeates your whole rib cage. Those of you who have been belly breathing, at some point you had to unlearn this breathing and learn belly breathing because it isn't how we naturally tend to breathe. Twisting to the first side, head, shoulders, upper chest, trickle down twist. Now, if you have concerns that you're not breathing diaphragmatically, and non-diaphragmatic breathing can be agitating. Remember that inhale cue. With the inhale, broaden your lower back ribs. Let's do one more breath here. Back to the front. Breathing where your lungs are. Twisting to the other side. And back to the middle. Take your legs back, the hands and knees. And now we're going to work with cat-cow to help reinforce directing the breath to where the lungs are. Inhale, arch your spine up toward the ceiling like a Halloween cat. And exhale, cow. Inhale, cat. Exhale, cow. One more. And then turn your toes under. Back to yoga pose, head down dog. And continue breathing where your lungs are. And exhale, walk your feet forward. Inhale, fold. Exhale, roll your spine up. Arms down. Exhale, connect to your belly. Maintain that connection. Inhale. And make sure your diaphragm is involved in a healthy way. Inhale, broaden your lower back ribs. All right. Left hand to your right ribs. Exhale, right arm up. This time we're going to keep it up in there. Exhale, side bend left. Inhale up. Exhale, ribs go down as you side bend left. Inhale up. One more. Exhale. Inhale. Arms down. Oh, so good. Doing it a second time. Right hand, left ribs. Exhale, left arm up. Exhale, side bend right. Inhale up. Arms down. Breathe into your lungs. You feel how your shoulders naturally rise up and down with your breathing? That helps release stagnation that leads to a painful neck. Exhale, both arms up. Inhale, roll down. Exhale, gorilla. Inhale, step back, head down dog. And then come on down and set up in a seated position. So I'm going to use a cushion here. I suggest you sit in a chair. Or if you are going to sit on the floor, make sure you're sitting up on something. And the reason to sit up on a chair or up on a cushion or a blanket is, again, for your knees to be a little bit lower. That helps keep your hip muscles from grabbing and allows you to sit upright. So head held high, upper chest open. And you feel how those hip flexor muscles tend to grab? That makes sitting upright for a lot of us really tiring very quickly. Small wonder so many people slouch. through your sitting bones root down, and let your lower belly be what supports the lift of your spine. And then you're free to let your left thigh bone drop, your right thigh bone drop, and release at least some of that clenching that so many people experience when they work on improving their posture. Now, I spent a lot of time working at a desk, trying to finish up my doctoral work. And sometimes my neck and my shoulders get stiff. Whenever that happens, that's a reminder I'm not breathing where my lungs are. This is a technique I use a lot. Exhale. It's not like clench your belly or abs of steel. It's pretty light. Maintain that connection. Descend the diaphragm down to inhale. Exhale. Tone. Lightly maintain the tone. Descend the dome of the diaphragm downward to inhale. You feel how that gets your rib cage moving? Shoulder blades naturally rise up and down. And I feel almost immediately releasing my neck muscle. So even though belly breathing, I think, is one of the most unfortunate ideas that has come out of yoga, the alternate nostril breathing, a lot of people report is very calming. Let's see if that holds true for you. Bring your left hand up, block your left nostril, and now breathe in and out of your right nostril. Now switch it up. Breathe in and out of your left nostril. Now drop that hand, breathe in and out of both nostrils. Remember breathing in through your nose is your first line of defense of your immune system. All those mucous membranes catch and trap bacteria and viruses. And then they harmlessly drop into the stomach acids. So if at all possible, when at all possible, breathe through your nose. And when you're out and about and doing your day and active, Breathe like this. You don't have to do deep breathing. And then when you're kicking back and sitting in the sofa or lying in bed, then belly breathing is perfectly okay. All right. Time flies when you're having fun. Sound like we have 2 questions, comments?
So, lying on your stomach, I mentioned that some of the collarbones down
Yeah,
sometimes. So just asking about is it a micro movement? Is it imagery? She's not really feeling much.
yeah. So one question is lying on the belly, and lying on the belly is a really great way to use the floor to give you feedback at where your body is in space. So almost all of us, our head is forward, and we've been there so long, we don't even really feel that our head is forward any longer. So the floor gives us feedback at our spine alignment. So I use the cue, take your upper chest collarbones toward the floor. They're not going to touch, but it's a small movement that direction, and that tends to align the torso, abdomen, and thorax. And then float the nose and chin off the floor, then extends that alignment to include neck and head. So if we're going to categorize it, it tends to be more of a micro movement. Bring your collarbones to the floor rather than a macro movement. Great.
And then some feel mild
Yeah. So somebody observes is that in Sanskrit, there's a term for engagement of the pelvic floor is called Mulabanda. And this discussion of breathing, that a sense of that tone in the pelvic floor, that Mulabanda spontaneously arises. Absolutely. So it's really hardwired into our nervous system that we have a natural amount of tone in the pelvic floor, a natural amount of tone in the lower belly, and we don't have to train it. And it's there. And part of the yoga lore is the idea that you have to create it. But let's reframe that and more think it naturally occurs, and to bring awareness to its natural occurrence. And unless you train these natural movements out by this unnatural focus on belly breathing, then the focus is more pelvic floor naturally has tone, lower belly naturally has tone as part and parcel of your breathing. Anything else? Wonderful. Thank you so much. And let's do this again next week.